There seems to be a pattern over the last couple of legislative sessions of lawmakers wanting to regulate the intimate details of Idahoans' personal lives. Things like smoking, abortion, library books, and medical treatment for transgenders. Yesterday, the House lawmakers passed House Bill 675 overwhelmingly. This bill would ban trans youth from getting medical treatments to help transition, things like hormone blockers or even surgeries, by criminalizing parents and doctors. The bill is now with the Senate, but while we wait to see what happens with it, we wanted to get some facts. A medical expert's insight on statements that were made by lawmakers during yesterday's hearing. And Katya, you were kind of looking into this today. What did you find out?
Well, Brian, I spoke to Dr. Marvin Alviso, from Family Medicine Residency of Idaho in Boise. And they have 3 transgender clinics in Idaho, 2 in Nampa and 1 in Boise. And while he couldn't speak to the other clinics, he spoke for the patients that he's been seeing. There are over 400 of them going through gender transitions as we speak. 40 of them are under the age of 18.
Somebody who comes in at 12, 13, not yet in puberty, we do nothing on these patients. We do what we call social affirmation. So if they want to change their name to more masculine, more feminine, where comfortable, they want to introduce a different form of pronoun to use. Those are the things that we support in them.
Yeah, and that's one of the first steps. He says the reason they don't do anything is because they wait until children are at the age of puberty to interview them and start the blockers. But Representative Skog, author of the bill we heard yesterday, says otherwise.
Children as young as 11, 12, 13 are getting puberty blockers, which are inserted surgically.
They're not inserted surgically, it's an injection. So there is a medical condition called central precocious puberty. So it exists in medical science. So I myself, I have a niece who has central precocious puberty. So they start puberty at the age of 7 or 8. So very young, they start menstruating, they have like chest development already. So your goal is to stop this puberty until they're old enough. So you're just pausing puberty.
After about 4 months, they are usually sterilized for life. That's a permanent decision.
We are not sterilizing them. So we're just putting a pause on their puberty so that when they're old enough to undergo puberty, once we stop the medication, their puberty ensues in 3 to 4 months. So it's the same concept that we're using in children who are transgender or gender diverse. We're putting a pause in their puberty until they're old enough to kind of know more now that they experience it, they don't have to undergo this painful puberty that they do not want to begin with, then that decreases their gender dysphoria, they become more functional, and I think that's one less thing for them to worry.
And he says of his 40 youth transgender patients, 14 of them are currently on puberty blockers. Once a child has been on puberty blockers for about 2 years, by 16 years old, that's when crossed sex hormones or hormone treatments are introduced. And from that point on, the patient is monitored every 3 or 6 months to make sure they are not having any negative side effects. He says it's important to start hormone treatment at that age for a number of reasons.
By the time you're 17 or 18, you have the features already that you don't want. So we're trying to avoid, for them for people who's transitioning female, we're trying to avoid for them to have that masculine features, which will be very hard to stop once it's in there already. We know that these medications, with counseling, with medication, that these will help alleviate the very tumultuous puberty that children already undergo. So imagine if you're a transgender undergoing puberty and then with this gender dysphoria as well, it's too much. And then the least we can do would be help them thrive in a better environment so they can proceed as normal, as much as normality that they can. This is a very dear topic for me because I've been doing this one for the past 7 years, and I've seen improvement in all facets of life of these patients. And stopping this puberty, you are driving these patients to commit suicide.
Yeah, So it's tough to hear. And Brian, we heard a lot yesterday about procreation, right? And what does this do to fertility? Well, according to him, he says before any treatment starts, patients are asked if they want to save or freeze their sperm or egg cells for future fertility use. He says even in his 7 years of doing this, he's only had one patient regret their decision to go through this transition process.
Adolescence, puberty, already a confusing enough time for a lot of people. But we heard, like what Bree said to you yesterday, how old were you when you knew you were a woman? I mean, some people pretty much figure this out pretty early on.
Yeah, and I asked the doctor today, he says 4 years old.
Wow.
When we figure out, what we are.
Yeah, some people it takes a little longer, but still, some people not so much. All right, thanks. With all that being said, Katya, this is what was said about House Bill 675, seeing the light of day on the Senate side.
Well, I don't think you'll see any, some of the craziness that the House seems to like to do get very far in the Senate.
Some of the craziness Senate Pro Tem Chuck Winder is referring to would likely include the transgender bill we just spoke about. On a Zoom meeting with legislative leaders and local reporters today, Senator Winder was asked about several bills that were sent over from the House, specifically House Bills 675 and 666, the one that could criminalize librarians should harmful materials get into the hands of kids. Winder said he assigned both bills to the Senate State Affairs Committee, and he already has some thoughts on the transgender affirmation bill.
I don't think there's significant drumbeat for it. I think there'll be some that will want to see it happen for whatever their reason might be. If I were a betting person, I would give it pretty low odds of advancing.
Then there was this on the librarians as lawbreakers bill, number 666.
I do not see the chamber picking this one up. I don't see it getting a hearing in committee. I think it's very appropriately numbered 666. If you understand the symbolism of the number, I think it's mischief and something that doesn't need to happen.
Winder went on to say the Senate has a tendency to ask a lot of questions, and a lot of time the bills sponsored doesn't have a lot of answers. He said he assigned those bills to State Affairs for good reason. And apparently, there's a drawer where bills like this and these are put in by committee chairs. While Winder said he doesn't advise what gets put in those drawers, once they are there, though, they tend to stay there and not go any farther. It appears to be a pretty big drawer also on the Senate side, with little time left to open them back up. Legislative leadership has made it clear they hope to adjourn by the end of the month.